Hey there, it's Kat Kinsman, Executive Features Editor at Food & Wine, and this fall, we're launching the new Food & Wine Classic in Charleston with our partners at Southern Living and Travel + Leisure, and we want to see you there. Join us September 27th through the 29th to learn from iconic chefs, share a glass with innovative wine experts, and experience Charleston with one-of-a-kind events. Tickets are on sale now at foodandwine.com/Charleston Classic. That's foodandwine.com/Charleston Classic. See you down in Charleston.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything. West Home is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Learn more at westhome.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hey, welcome to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. I'm Jimmy Carboni. Celebrate our 15th year on Heritage Radio Network. So Cask Ale is a really important part of the whole beer culture, traditions, styles, and some really neat people are making cask. We met with Sean from the Seed Beer in Atlantic City last week, and he said we started talking about the cask ales that he serves at the Cricket Club in Cape May, New Jersey. So that's the overview of our conversation. Let's go around the room and our guests will introduce themselves.
Hey, Ryan Brower again, former beer editor at Gear Patrol and certified Cicerone. Glad to be here.
Sean Towers here from the Seed, Living Beer Project in Atlantic City.
Kyle Kolkowitz from the Cricket Club in Cape May, New Jersey.
Thanks, guys. We got three guests here, and we're going to talk about cask ale. So, Sean, give us the intro. You're down at the Seed. We did our episode last week talking about, what things that you do and the beers that you make. But cask ale in Cape May, New Jersey, tell us about it.
Yeah, it's awesome. We've been really passionate about English-inspired pub beer and that whole realm of easy drinking, lower alcohol beers at the Seed for a while. We've known Kyle and the folks down here. Yeah, cheers. We've known Kyle and the folks down here for a while from some of their other properties. And when these guys were interested in taking this property over and starting up Cricket Club, they approached us with the idea of running a full cask program here. So we've done some kind of cask conditioned beer and real ale at the brewery that we've served just for, specific events or just for a fun tapping on the bar, gravity kegs. But we've never built out a program surrounding around cask ale. So when these guys were looking to jump down that rabbit hole, it was a really, really fun opportunity for us to hop on board with.
So Kyle, tell us about why cask. Do you have any other beers besides cask? A little bit of the planning and thought process of this great place, the Cricket Club.
Well, first time I ever had a cask beer was a Standard Tap in Philadelphia. And ever since then, it was just another dimension of a way to drink beer, which we're greatly enthusiastic about. The reason we felt inspired for the cask here was our sister restaurant, the Mad Batter, has 15 beers on tap, rotating from, Pilsners, lagers, sours, IPAs, and doubles. So we kind of wanted to not mimic the same sort of, beer setup we had next door. We do that. We still continue to. We have a lot of fun with all the local breweries. But we just wouldn't, my time knowing Sean and Amanda and this opportunity coming up, we figured, why not give it a try?
Well, I'll tell you, the first beer we're drinking is great. But Ryan, give us your introduction to cask and why we're here today.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just different, just even from, to kind of describe the bar a little bit. What Kyle built here, it feels like we're kind of sitting in an English pub even, from the interior design, this custom built bar to, we can kind of see the hand pumps behind us and leading into the swan necks down there. There's 4 taps. So it's just a different experience. I'm curious, Kyle, what's the experience for educating the customer when somebody comes in? You don't have any other beers on tap. I think you have cans and bottles too, right? But somebody comes in for a beer and you've got to kind of educate them because most people in America don't really find this in their everyday bar. So what's that like educating the customer?
I mean, it's really like anything. It starts off daunting and a little, intense, kind of miss a little bit more than you make it. But we have a little definition that Sean wrote up from the seed to explain cask beer that we have on the back of our beer menu. And, in time, the servers, they understand it. In the beginning, it's the start of a new restaurant, everything else. So it was a little different just to have them figure out how to sell it. But it's really engagement, which is one of the most important aspects of running a bar and a restaurant, is to not just sell something, but sell something you like to drink, to enjoy, something you're knowledgeable about and can explain it. Because it's not, if someone's excited it's a beer, it's normally a 15, 20-second sort of intro, and then the rest is drinking it and enjoying it and seeing that difference.
Kyle, don't you sell by style as well? Because it's amazing. You have 4 different cask ales on tap.
Well, we like to have, our light. We always have pub beer, trying to have a Kolsch Pilsner, something a little darker like a stout. But really, we just kind of leave it up to the brewers. Hasn't gone wrong so far. It works pretty easy. I don't have to place an order or look at a sell sheet. I just say, Sean, we're running low on these beers, and he brings some to fill them.
It sounds like what I like to drink, because I can't imagine having to rotate 15 taps every week. Matt, introduce yourself, and there's a bar manager here. Introduce yourself and just weigh in.
My name is Matt Reeves, lead bartender at the Cricket Club in Cape May. And concerning your question with how we sell it, I love when people come in and they say, what do you have on draft? And I'm like, well, this is going to be fun. And I don't have draft, I have cast, actually. And then it's sharing with the guests the process and the texture, the mouthfeel, more importantly, the temperature, all those differences that you're not going to get from a modern day draft system with beers that have been force carbonated with nitrogen or carbon dioxide. And they're really engaged and they really love it after you give them the explanation.
So we're drinking a lager. Now you sell us on it, Sean. What is the first? This tastes amazing, whatever it is.
This is one of our best bitters. This is called Here Now. So I won't go into too much detail about this because I know we spoke about this last week a little bit. But these are some of the only beers we're making at the Seed where we are not actively using 100% Rabbit Hill or New Jersey grown and malted ingredients. For these English-inspired pub beers, we're bringing ingredients in from overseas. We want to be as kind of true to this style as we possibly can, but it still gives us that outlet and that passion project for us to work in this kind of low ABV, interesting world of keep saying session beers, right? So these session beers that you can drink 6, 8, 10 of small pours or full pours if you got nothing else to do that day, and enjoy something really cool. And like Matt mentioned, just the mouthfeel, the texture is just a different experience drinking these cask beers. So we can and we force carbonate some of these. So like this best bitter we had on tap at the brewery, we had in cans at the brewery. We've done nitrogen cans, but to me, this still just hand pulled on cask conditioned is the best way to drink these beers for me.
So how do you describe the mouthfeel? Because there's a lot going on in this glass, and I definitely could have more than one.
Yeah, I think it's just more supple. It's softer. It's a little more velvety. It kind of allows you to take where certain, what I would just say, harsh edges from a standard draft system CO2 forced carb poured beer would maybe interfere with some of those really soft textural characters. And it lets that all come through, but not necessarily amplify. They don't punch you in the face. It just lets all of that soft malt character, balanced hops, just kind of meld in this really smooth, easy package is the best way I can describe it.
That's great. Ryan, next question.
I guess, Sean, what styles have you typically brewed for the Cricket Club, and do you typically brew anything specifically just for them, or is it all styles you already brew and you're kind of making it just specifically for them?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Kyle and I talked about this a lot before we were starting up the program. For us being so small, doing any dedicated specific beer for an account is very, very difficult. Luckily for us, Kyle and everyone here is pretty much, like you mentioned earlier, just cool with whatever we decide to cask condition and send down. We have a lot, or not as much now, because we've kind of settled in with what the folks are liking, what these guys are liking here. But early on, we had a lot more back and forth about what, especially when we kind of dive outside of the realm of traditional English-inspired beer, a lot of the cask conditioned lagers, we were kind of ping-ponging back and forth which ones hit and which ones we weren't the most fond of. What it's done for us is it's allowed us to amp up our English-inspired beer production at the brewery. So if we're going to, even for us, a smaller tank, about 8-barrel tank, we have a hard time moving 8 barrels of, pub beer, because most of what we're doing is just through our tasting room, and that takes a while. We don't really have the space or the cooperage to hang on to that. If we can direct half of that batch into casks for Kyle and the Cricket Club, then it lets us keep up that production. It lets us keep up those yeast cultures. It lets us continue making English beer. So we haven't necessarily made beers specifically for cask here, but we've definitely made beers specifically for cask here, if that makes sense.
What's that process like when you're splitting up a barrel for, okay, half of it's going to stay, maybe we're going to can some of it, we're going to put it on draft for us, and then the other half's going to come down here to Kyle and the Cricket Club. Like, what's the difference in process when you cask it, basically?
Yeah, it's a great question also. Before we scheduled this conversation here, I know we had a quick back and forth about real ale versus cask ale via email. These beers are about as perfectly close to real ale as you can be without truly being real ale by definition. Real ale is, a beer that was fermented and then re-fermented in its eventual serving container through secondary fermentation, no additional CO2, no forced carbonation, and then most importantly, but not most importantly, but finally for real ale, skipping some small detail along the way, served without any additional CO2, served via gravity or via vacuum pump, basically. These guys did a great job here in building their system out for a little bit of longevity, so we can push some casks they don't have to be served in a day, basically. So there's a very, very light bleed of CO2 back into their system here that keeps the casks fresh. Doesn't push, if there's no forced CO2 that's going to push the beer out, and there's no additional pressure of CO2 that's going to increase carbonation in the beer. It's just going to keep a soft blanket over there. So from a process standpoint in production, we are trying our best to match timing and fermentation, where whatever we're going to rip off for casks is going to get filled towards the end of fermentation and get bunged in the casks and allowed to finish its fermentation in cask for that gentle soft carbonation. That's just not feasible to catch at all times. So if it hits terminal gravity, we are then adding a little bit of priming sugar to the casks to allow whatever yeast was still in suspension to go through that secondary fermentation in the cask in the serving vessel. But certainly still adhering to, no forced carbonation, no added CO2 along the way.
But if you're saying for the love of cask, when I come into the Cricket Club, I'm going to say, I want to drink what he's drinking. Is that the experience that you get?
I mean, most of the time people want to drink all four. They always ask what I start with, and it really depends. Like darker months, I like the oatmeal stout. Here, best bitter, pub ales are going to work perfect. They got a Kolsch, even better. But yeah, I mean, you have to sell the enthusiasm, which we have by default. So people come in, want to talk beer. It's a conversation we love to oblige.
Yeah, no, you really stepped up here. I haven't been to a really good cask bar in America. Tell us about the system. I'm looking across the bar. I see the kind of hand pump handles, but you've got a whole self-contained system here right at the bar.
Well, for space and just practicality, we didn't want to have a glycol system. It's an old building. We already have trouble with the basement. Putting a machine like that downstairs wasn't going to work. So we ran everything inside just a refrigerator. Kept all the engines, so it's sealed on the top, just so you can pour it, but it's all self-contained. It serves a singular purpose. And without having to use it for like wines and things like that, we're able to keep the temperature precise and limit the amount of times you open the door, because it's really just geared for one aspect of the bar.
Sean, do you advise on these kind of things? You're making the beer, you're advising on the service and the equipment.
I would say yes if I had to. I really haven't had to here. Kyle and Matt and these guys had a really good grasp on what kind of program they wanted to be running and how they wanted to be portraying everything here to the customers. We can be a bit picky at the seed, so we'd certainly jump in if we're misaligned with folks, but that wasn't the case here, which made it nice and easy for us. We obviously had a bunch of conversations early on about all of the specifics. One little thing, especially since Kyle just mentioned temperature, we're not really running exactly as warm as you would find in traditional English pubs, but we're certainly not running as cool as you would find on a forced draft system. We kind of wanted to meet somewhere in the middle. At the end of the day, this still is a unique experience in Cape May and in a lot of places in America. So to try to have folks jump in when the entirety of their beer program is cask beer in a warm, maybe kind of not normal, quote unquote, environment for folks might be a little put offish in the beginning. And quite admittedly, we're really happy with where these beers drink in this temperature range. So we didn't really feel the need to push it that extra 5 to 6 degrees warmer just for the sake of tradition. It's all very deeply based in tradition and inspired by that, but we're still over here doing our own thing.
Well, I mean, we're in Cape May, New Jersey. It can get quite steamy in the summer. I come down every summer too, so I appreciate the temperature that you're serving it at. What are some of the challenges of operating in Cape May, New Jersey? I mean, it gets hot. It's damp.
I mean, I would never say the weather. We're pretty, if I was to say so myself, blessed down here. It's a beautiful little town. We're half a block from the beach. I mean, there's not a whole lot to complain about. You ride your bike to work. It's a pretty friendly place. We figure, it's a good place to sell beer. Our clientele, like you said, been receptive, enjoyable. It works down here. It's not...
It's great. It's really special. And I keep going with Ryan. We go Ryan and Sean.
Yeah, I guess Kyle, is it more work though to maintain the system? I know it's less. You've only got 4 pulls here as opposed to your sister restaurant that has 12 taps, right? But you've got to kind of clean the lines more frequently, right? So, and you got to do that, like we said, a little more education. What do you feel is like the cost benefit of like that extra work for the better payoff, I guess, and explain that sort of thinking?
I mean, I never look at any of it. Work is just you show up, whatever the day holds. But for this, it's fun. And the reason it's so enjoyable and we do it is because this is what we like to drink. It's what we wanted to give a shot at, see if it worked, and have fun with it. And cleaning the lines, it's a little bit of time, but we also drink the beer. That's always what I say when it comes down to cleanliness anywhere. It's like no one's going to eat or drink here more than myself and the guys that I work with. So why would we not want the beer tasting as good as it could?
And it's not so bad. I mean, you've got a system that's right under the bar, so you've got very short lines. It's not like you're in a hotel where your lines could be a couple hundred feet. Yeah. Great question, Ryan. Back to styles and traditions, and I know we're going to taste the next beer as well. But style and tradition, I feel like with cask, there's this kind of mystery and romance that's kind of sexy, and I think that it's nice to be in a nice setting like this.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of threads through so much of what we enjoy about the beer drinking and beer sharing experience is, the entire environment. And when that wraps into, like you said, the romance of Cask Ale, a lot of times that's not necessarily the beer per se. It's everything that went along with the experience of that beer. So when I think about, and like all of us at the seed, when we think about the romance of Cask Ale, that's the romance of, a couple 100-year-old wooden pub. It's the cozy fire in the corner. It's the, publican that's pouring your beer that has been doing that for 50 years and has seen like every trend in the differences in malt over that time and can share those little tidbits of information that you wouldn't get elsewhere. I think that's part of the biggest romanticism in Cask Ale for us, is how steeped it is in tradition and how steeped it is in like what I would view as, positive beer culture. It's the culture of like bringing people together and sharing stuff in a comfortable space. And I think like Cask Ale and pub ale in general kind of embodies that for us.
And just that I'm drinking this now, I mean, sometimes I'm a purist and you try to think about, I'm in this old pub in England somewhere, but we're not. The climate's different. And also people don't drink that way anymore. I mean, I want to drink a cold beer. I honestly don't really want to. If it's a cellar beer, maybe it's a cold cellar. I mean, what do you think about modern styles and everything as a brewer?
I got to think about this question a little bit. Modern styles in regard to cask ale, or about like the environment you're drinking it? Yeah. So in regard to cask ale, I think modern styles obviously serve more than their place. It's such a major component of the continued evolution and resurgence in interest in beer, and like, quite frankly, resurgence in interest in cask ale and stuff like that. We've got people that have gone through, Skittles this, Kit Kat that, double, triple, lactose, dry hop, whatever, and that's all new and interesting. And I think we've got a world of especially younger beer drinkers that are now finding that cask ale is new and interesting because they haven't heard about it before. So when there's things that are styles or experiences in beer that to us are some of the oldest, but for a lot of people they've never heard of it before, I think that's where you could tie that all together.
Yeah, now let's get Matt back on. So let's introduce the second beer that we're drinking. I'm just gonna check it. We moved on. We're moving on fast. We're drinking 4 beers in 45 minutes.
Cozy Up is a wild beer that when I serve to a guest, visually, they're like, oh, this is going to be like a malt bomb, super, super heavy, dark. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'd say you give it a sip first and then tell me about it. And they're always blown away at the light body of it, even though it's very, very dark in color. And describing it to a guest, the best way I do it to make it familiar with something that they're familiar with is I say it's closest to maybe a porter. And then as soon as I say that, they get, okay, dark in color, but light in body in their head, and then they enjoy it. And it's to be enjoyed. It's delicious.
Well, let's talk about color versus perception. I mean, even a Guinness can be 4-point-something%, even though it's dark, even though it's roasty. Who wants to talk about dark beer styles that are drinkable?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. Dark mild obviously falls into that category by name and by style. It's one of the most fun styles for us to drink for all of those reasons. You can pack a lot of really cool malt character in there, but it doesn't have to be heavy for us. This is Cozy Up, which is a collaboration we did with Forest and Maine, who's always been a big inspiration for us in the cask beer and English beer world. The idea with Cozy Up was to build a dark mild that our house dark mild, quote unquote, is called Stay a While, and it leans a lot bit more, to be quite frank, into the like English brown ale world. It's very roasty, very chocolate forward, very toffee laden. So it has a lot of those heavier flavor components to it. We wanted to do a dark mild on the other side of the flavor spectrum that we keep describing this as like Fig Newton and brown's bread, and it has a lot more of that like fruit driven malt character through it, which is pretty cool, like Matt was explaining, to come across for folks that might not expect that in a beer of this like dark garnet type of hue.
And Ryan, anything about drinkable beers with color?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Sean, are there any styles along that realm, that you haven't brewed and put in cask for the Cricket Club that you want to try it someday and maybe haven't yet?
Yeah, I think we this doesn't exactly answer your question because we have it on cask here right now in For Warmth, but that like baby oatmeal stout realm was something we had always envisioned doing at the brewery, but it wasn't something we could see through properly, forced carbs poured through a tap faucet or in cans. We did try nitro cans of it at first, and those went over pretty well. We did refuse to serve this beer on tap at the brewery. We only did can pours of the nitro cans. That's a mimicking technique. It's not actually getting you to the final component you're looking to share with someone. So that was a big one that we got really excited about to push through casks and through the hand engines here. And again, it was mentioned already, but the whole porter world, all of those darker, lower alcohol beers, I think they come across a lot more wholesomely through a cask conditioned realm and pulled on a hand pump.
Well, we're here at the Cricket Club in Cape May, New Jersey. There's nothing like being at a bar when they're setting up. Matt, the bartender, he's putting out his bar rags, and I can tell that Kyle's watching everything, thinking about what they're going to do, and they open at 4 because we came in an hour early. Thank you. Well, what are some? You mentioned a beer bar in Philly. What are places in Philly that you like that might inspire a place like this? I know Monk's Cafe, but I've only been to Philly a couple of times.
I mean, you really hit it. If I'm going to Philly now, I have an 8-year-old, so a bar isn't really my general direction I go. But yeah, I mean, Standard Tap was like the old classic. You know, I was going there when I was 21. We go there before we go to a baseball game, and that place always was on the forefront. And beer, you know, it's changed a lot over the years. It's changed, gone back several times, but they always seem to have a good pulse on it. So I trusted if they would have the Yards Love Stout on cast, and I was like, you know what, they're pouring of the year. They've got to be, you know, up to something. And ever since then was like, if we found a way, and we had a cast system next door, had the Mad Batter for a couple of years. We ended up needing the refrigeration space during the pandemic, and we never went back. We couldn't get cast beer during that time. So we kind of gave it up, and then that rolled right into the opportunity here.
Well, it's great down here. I forget when I come to Cape May that it's like more of a Philly area. The baseball, it's the Phillies and Philadelphia sports on TV instead of New York. And it's one thing I like. I definitely feel like I'm only 3 hours from New York, but I feel like I'm much farther away. What about you, Ryan? What places do you like in Philly? Because I want to give it a shout out because there's definitely a lot of Philly influence here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Yards itself has been big. Victory has got a great presence in Philly. Monks, like we talked about, Standard Tap. Barcade is another one. There's a location of Barcade there. There is a brewery or a beer bar I'm thinking of that closed a few years ago, and they were very European inspired, but for the life of me, I can't remember the name. It was like multi-floor, and they had like a restaurant too. It was like maybe 15 years ago I was there. So Philly for me, you know, growing up, like was much closer than New York City, you know, being from Long Beach Island, you know, about an hour outside of it. So definitely spent a lot more time in Philly than New York growing up. So.
And Sean, about the styles and making beer, you know, we had the dark mild last week. Tried it in a can. How are the beers different in can versus draft versus cask? The ones that you make.
Yeah, the ones that we make, I mean, other than the process along the way, there's no true difference in the beer, of course, but I feel like the way that the character is represented and the way the flavor and aroma comes across can be remarkably different. There's something to say for the gentle carbonation versus forced CO2. I mean, we drank this beer Cozy Up in cans last week. We had to carbonate that beer. It was forced carbonated. Sometimes we are naturally conditioning these beers in the tank before we can them, but we still have to carbonate them to a certain level so that we can can them properly, so we don't have oxidation in the cans and so on and so forth. That extra bit of CO2 from a more, you know, scientific standpoint is going to add a little bit of carbonic acid. There's going to be a little bit of carbonic bite to them. There's going to be a little sharper edges. That quote unquote acid character from the forced gas is going to lean a little bit into some character rather than others. So that when we come to the Cask Ale side of things, these beers are about half the carbonation levels, and that lack of carbonic acid is going to allow a lot of the softer, richer, and I don't mean rich from like a heft standpoint, but from the world of richer flavors to come through a little bit better without being sharpened or brightened up is the best way I can put it. And I don't mean that in a muddled sense. I mean that in a sense of really just like going back to the very simplistic term of like silky and velvety. It carries a lot of that character through in that textural sense, which makes it taste and smell different, I think.
So do you think that there are certain styles of beer that are better on draft and certain styles of beer are better on cask? And maybe like hop component?
Yeah, certainly. The easiest low-hanging fruit would be like hopefully we can get a chance to try soon before we run out of time here is for warmth, our oatmeal stout, that 3.8% little oatmeal stout. If we were to carb that to higher levels to can non-nitrogen cans or to pour through a normal draft system, it's going to drink a little thinner. It's going to drink a little, more metallic-y with that CO2 aspect that's going to be pushed in there, and you're going to get a lot of differences in that regard. So on cask, it does exactly what it wants to do, or what we want it to do. The other side of the spectrum would be like Saison. It's really easy for us to use as the kind of black and white here because we're carbonating our Saisons to a very, very high carbonation level. They're still naturally carbonated, but they are, triple or quadruple the carbonation volumes of these cask beers. If we were to serve Saison on cask, it would really remove a lot of the jump out of your glass, big, floral, bright, citrusy, funky, complex character that we're looking to kind of explode out of those beers. It would kind of be a muddled mess, I would think.
Yeah, and then you got bottle conditioned beers and everything else, right?
I'm curious. We got Kyle kind of pouring us the next beer, but I'm curious, Kyle or Matt, if he wants to jump in, the difference in pulling a beer engine versus just pulling a regular tap. And I'm looking. We've got Swan Neck, we've got a sparkler there to kind of create some carbonation for the head. So I'm just curious to explain for listeners the difference in the approach there when you kind of just kind of pull a beer.
Well, before I started bartending ever, you always wanted to be the guy pouring yourself a beer. I don't know if that's just like I said, it comes down to enthusiasm, but to have that power to pour it, it was great. You controlled all the taps. And then with this, it's just more fun. It's like an extra step, an extra experience. It's more personal. You can really slow, how you pour the beer, depending on speed, it's going to just how the beer pours into the glass. So it's, it's got that saying before, just pouring a tap, it's hold the glass on an angle and make sure it goes inside. This is a little more fun.
Matt?
It's much more intimate too. And the guests see you, put your body weight into it, really all right, he's not just pulling it, flipping it, it's all part of the experience, and it's very intimate.
So you're not just cracking open a can for them.
Yeah, or just taking a draft.
Something else.
Yeah, really kind of also, putting the tap itself into the glass, and I think that's just such a difference too, and a different experience for American drinkers in general. I was trying to think today of where are other places in New Jersey that actually have cask, and beer engines, and I was kind of coming up empty. I know Carton has one, I think, that Augie's consistently putting some beer on, but other than that, I don't know. Sean, Kyle, maybe if you guys know.
I will say this, there's nothing for me, especially after the pandemic, when I was stuck at home with cans, be able to come out and drink some type of cask ale. That's the ultimate on-premise drink, and it's fun. We're having fun. We're on our third beer.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm sure there's places that I can't think of off the top of my head, but I just wanted to throw a shout out to the folks out at Tonewood. Tonewood almost always has cask ale on tap. What I would consider proper cask beer on hand engines out there. And then the folks out at Oddbird do a tremendous job pushing their cask program as well. A little bit ashamed of myself. We haven't made time to get up there yet, but we love what they're doing and certainly wanted to give them a little nod for their appreciation and push for cask beer in this state as well.
Well, on that note, do you want to go through the categories of the different cask beer? I mean, what are there? There's real ale, cask conditioned. You said proper cask or proper ale. I mean, who wants to take a stab at defining that?
Yeah, I don't know if there's as many categories as you think. I was kind of using the term proper cask ale, meaning that they're taking what I would consider real beer. They're going through a secondary fermentation in the cask, and they're serving it properly. They're not taking a firkin or a pin and filling it with double IPA and packing that thing with a bunch of melon wedges and cantaloupe rinds and runts candies and saying that they have cask beer. That stuff's fun. It's part of like the American push and over the top isms. I just consider that, like a fun vessel to serve wild beer. That's not cask beer to me.
Okay. Let's take a short break. We're just going to take a short break. We'll be back in a few minutes on Beer Sessions Radio.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by their natural ecosystem, and are led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of their environment, both can thrive. Their team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment. These cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Hey, welcome back to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. I'm Jimmy Carboni. It's our 15th year. Support us and become a member at heritageradionetwork.org. So we're at the Cricket Club in Cape May, New Jersey. We've got the owner, Kyle, manager, Matt. We got Sean from the Seed Beer, and my good friend, Ryan Brower, great editor and writer.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to like what's everyone's experience with, old world, like drinking and over in Europe, So my wife and I, we went to the UK last year. That was the first time I had been to Ireland once, but it was on a layover and I had like a 5-hour layover and was able to go grab a beer at Temple Bar, in between the layover. But this was the first time I really sat in English pubs and really enjoyed, got to enjoy cask beer. So I'm curious what everybody else's experience is with that and just what that, if you've gotten to experience that, really.
Well, I want to jump in because there's a lot of funny stories. My first time in England, I was 18 and I was drinking Foster's in cans, so that doesn't count. But from having a bar that used to serve cask occasionally, we would always splurge and just bring in once a season, like a Ridgeway or a Coniston real cask ale from England, but they were so expensive. It wasn't the kind of thing we could do regularly, but the idea of having one cask that was that special and the real cask conditioned, it gave me a lot of respect for it. But to be here now and seeing a new brewery and a really well-run bar coming up with a not new, but definitely a very workable and very drinkable system, I find that this is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, our experiences overseas drinking haven't been too focused in the UK or in the cask ale realm. We just went over to England for the first time this year, actually, for a festival run by our friends at Beak for These Hills. That's a story for another day because the festival wound up getting canceled for insane weather. But we got to drink through some cask ales at some English pubs, which was a blast. But most of our European beer culture experiences over the past few years has been mostly through Belgium, northern France, that whole area. And for us, certainly focused on kind of what I would call the Saison and Lambic trail. So we did get to enjoy quite a bit of ridiculously good cask lambic while we were over there, which is a whole nother animal that we don't need to dive into today if we're going to keep focused in this English realm. But certainly doing a proper trip through the UK to drink through cask ale is something on my bucket list. We spent most of our time this recent trip in southern England, and you'll find a pretty staunch difference in service between southern and northern England. One of the most glaring is the use of a sparkler or not. Northern England's going to be pro-sparkler. Southern England is going to be anti-sparkler. I tend to prefer sparkler, not to knock anyone in southern England, but the sparkler, the sparkler is This little attachment that'll go on the end of the faucet that's going to go into the glass that's going to help nucleate or release some of that light carbonation that's going to help with the cascading, help keep a lasting foam. I'm a big proponent of foam in beer, even in cask ale, so I tend to prefer that.
Honestly, when I think about the old cask conditioned ales and whatever they were, I know that in the 50s when Guinness started putting their beer in kegs, and it was a nitrogen keg, I feel like they created that system to make a stable, basically cask style beer, and they have a sparkler, so it comes out with that head. How is this like doing it cask version versus putting it on nitrogen with the sparkler? How is the beer different for you as a brewer?
Yeah, this is maybe semantics and maybe opinion. I think nitrogen, even in the Guinness realm, nitrogen is another mimic technique that could be used to mimic cask ale, mimic real ale. And it does a wonderful job, and it does it slightly differently, but nitrogen as opposed to CO2 is going to be less soluble in beer. So in a Guinness pour, for instance, when you're going to pour that first that first fill pour and then go through your hard pour, what you're doing is you're giving that beer and that liquid a better chance to release the gas, and nitrogen will release easier than CO2 will. The same thing's going to happen in a can, and that's how you get that nice cascade, and that's how you remove some of that carbonation. What that's doing to me, and again, this is a little bit semantics and a little bit of an opinion, but to me, what that's doing is getting you as close as you can to cask ale and to pull on a hand engine without having that equipment or that setup at your disposal.
Kyle, again, more about your system and how it works, because it is quite novel, and I feel like you guys, to me, this is, I would say, this is eye-opening, isn't it?
Well, you always need a friend that's a welder, where the centerpiece came from. Because I can't explain it properly, but a good welder comes, looks at it, and he goes, I know what you're talking about. Do less. I'll figure it out. And I mean, that was part of the fun of it. Even at the refrigerator, it's set up where the initial investment in it was just getting everything in line. Even if the refrigerator was to go, we could move the entire system in and out and put it in something else. And it was, we like I said, we didn't have the space for a glycol. We didn't want to go through all this. This just made sense. There wasn't a lot of information out there about doing something like this, but just talking with Sean and everyone else, it was like, just keep it easy. Keep it all in one spot. Don't have it spread out. Don't put the kegs in the basement. It's a short run. We clean it ourselves, but it's all right in front of us behind a bar with sinks and faucets. So it just really just the simplicity of it was what works.
Well, the hand pull is really cool too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really neat system to see built like this. I am curious, Kyle, kind of to jump into a little bit more like the business side for you. What is it like for you? I like I said, I grew up Long Beach Island. That's where I live. We understand tourist season, summer. You've got 3 months to make, everything you need to survive the rest of the year. What is it like for you, summer and catering to tourists as opposed to the other 9 months of the year and catering to the local crowd?
Well, I mean, and I think we always get a good mix here all year round. We've got a good local crowd that comes in on a regular basis. And then, you always get the tourism coming through. That's really, like I said, you got to love it. It's fun. It's a good business to be in. And you get a lot of engagement. People, like I said, we're talking beer, and you get people that are really receptive. Obviously, this time of year is a little crazy, but it gives it fun that there's a contrast. We go from here, then it mellows out, then there's a nice Christmas season. Then you got the doldrums, but then my favorite thing is watching the town wake up again. And everyone kind of needs that reset, February, March. But then it's always exciting again, watching things start opening up, everything starts blooming, the ocean gets nicer. It's always, you get a good mix of all seasons, and I think it comes with the people. There's a nice local community down here. And then there's always just people coming down to visit.
It's truly a beautiful community down here at Cape May, New Jersey. The third beer, Sean, tell us about it, because there's a little more hoppiness.
Yeah, the third beer that we just drank was Seas of the Ocean. This was fun because this is actually the first time I've had this beer on cask. This is a collaboration we've done for 2 years running now with Ocean Casino and Resorts in Atlantic City. So this is a pale lager brewed entirely with Rabbit Hill barley and a little bit of aged hops. It's all Hallertau Blanc, so a little bit kind of more New World and fresher. So you're going to get a little bit more of that fruit character and brightness through a little bit of the, noble floral nature that's kind of latent behind that, and marigold petals. So this is going to have a little bit of floral earthiness that's going to lay on top of that. But I actually think the marigold comes through a little more in a kind of like peppery, earthy way through this. This, you'll notice, is carbonated just slightly higher than the other 3 cask beers that we'll try here. We try to kind of just give another, little kiss of CO2, from natural carbonation, of course, but a little kiss of extra re-fermented carbonation to the lagers, just so that they still drink with a little more of that pop and brightness, since most of the lagers that we do are going to follow that like more hop forward realm than the other English beers.
We had this in the previous episode. We had this in can. This is what I'm saying. It's a completely different beer on this system. And I have to say, I actually like it better here at the Cricket Club than I did in can. The can was also not cold. So
yeah, the cans weren't cold when we were hanging out at Wildwood's Barbecue, which that temperature factor is certainly going to affect the lagers. But yeah, I have to say, I agree with you. Even with some of the beers that we'll try here that drink tremendously differently on cask, even if they don't always taste better per se, I always think they taste just as good, even if it's in a different realm.
But you got to love them all, right? But Ryan, the whole thing, the different styles and different kind of beers, it's kind of fascinating. When I think about traditions and beer styles, beer styles kind of evolved where they were made and how they were drinking, right?
Yeah, I think, Sean kind of touched on this earlier, that like modern beer, maybe you're jamming it packed with oatmeal and all these different crazy fruited beers. And there's a lot of different ways to make beer at the end of the day. And I think we talked about this last week, Sean. These are styles that typically people would say that are in the box, but I think we've gotten to a point in the brewing industry that these are actually outside the box, because not a lot of people are there's not many breweries that can say they're brewing beer to support a whole beer program of one bar that is total cask system, so like that's different. That's, maybe 100 years ago, that was pretty normal and typical, but now it's not. So that's kind of outside the box. So I think we're seeing that like kind of full circle realm, and it is neat to, like you said earlier, like people experiencing cask for the first time or these old styles, just the best bitter, like at your brewery, right? Even just on a regular, draft system or in cans, is something that a lot of people in this country have not experienced before. So I think we're entering a new realm. It kind of feels like, where we're kind of getting away from, like we talked about this last week, IPAs still are the dominant style of craft beer in America, but I feel like there's more openness, and people like Kyle and what he's doing here at the Cricket Club are trying to educate people and show people there's more than just that to beer, and it doesn't have to be just one way. So, yeah.
But there's one thing about styles. When you think about whether a Trappist style of beer or bourbon in America, these things didn't just happen overnight. And so there's a lot of people experimenting. I feel like the people experimenting with beers may not be the future of beer in America, but really honing styles and having everyone always talks about proper glassware, proper service, and clean lines. I think doing something like this, where one brewer who's local is working with one bar owner on a certain type of beer and system. And like you said, you did modify your Vienna lager to run on the cask, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, we have to modify everything a little bit, but it's not necessarily a modification in the recipes or the approach. It's a modification in the process, and it just gets back to attention to detail with everything, like you mentioned, the serving style, the way the tapster or publican or whatever you want to name them is pouring the beer and serving the beer and speaking about the beer and educating about the beer, and the service for that matter. And it all still comes back to, from our perspective, the process along the way. So if we can tweak one little thing towards the back end of this beer's production to make it drink exactly how we want it to drink, and also make it easier for them to pour and describe to folks, that's going to match the entire picture of what they're trying to share with people, the better. So again, it all comes back to attention to detail, like you said, glassware, service style, process. The outside the box and inside the box conversation is great. And I think it's fun to look at both sides of that. And I think what should be pushed more on both sides is that just focus. If you want to focus on candy beers, that's fantastic. If you want to focus on process and trying to hit, a shareable thing in a glass that you want people to experience the way that you experience in your eyes, fantastic as well.
Sometimes I think about if I were 21 and how would I get turned on to good beer? And I actually have a daughter who's almost 22, and she would text me and be at a supermarket and say, "Oh, there's this beer," and she'd send me a picture. And I didn't know like what the quality, how it was kept and all this other things. But now that I'm sitting here, I'm like, if I were, it's like a time capsule. If I were 21 or 22 and someone was just turning me on to beer and they said, "Come to Cricket Club, you're going to drink their Cask Ale." And you found one of the styles that you'd like. What if that's what all you drank all summer? And then you went somewhere else. It was like when I was a kid, it was like when I was young and traveling in England, I found that I liked, it was dumb, but it was Foster's in can. And it was one beer that I liked. And I came back and that's what I was drinking. Or you hear about people in a war that they're in Europe drinking red wine and they come back and drink this wine. How do you educate people that are young to like craft beer? I mean, I just answered, you got to come to Cricket Club. But
I don't know the answer on how to educate people, but I just wanted to chime in on your sentiment there. I think something so special about this is it might sound a bit corny and get there at times, but for me, I get really excited and really passionate about all these fleeting moments and how impactful that can be and how the memory and the experience can really linger with you. And to me, sitting here at the Cricket Club with a group of friends at the wooden bar with, a hand-pulled Cask Ale, I can't take that with me. I can't bring that in a cooler to the beach. And that experience is great in itself, but different. I think there's something really special about the experiential side of this where this is the moment we had this afternoon, and we can sit here and drink this Cask Ale, and we can kind of revel in that if we had a good time. I'm having a good time. I hope you guys are too. But that's something that sticks with you for a while. And if that's something that's going to bring you back and have you bring more friends here and keep having that experience, and that's the only way to have it, I think there's something really, really special and important to be said about this space as a place to come and to meet and to share beers. And it's not necessarily something that can be brought and shared around. You have to come here to do it. And I think that's part of the fun side of this as well.
The other thing I like about what you're doing, Kyle, I like the four draft options, the four cask options. I know a lot of really accomplished bar owners, Max Tosti in New England, who used to be and once again is Deep Ellum Bar. Some of the newer restaurants he opened, he was only putting six taps on. Or Greg Enghert, we were talking about him from DC, who had Grand Delancey in New York. The idea of just having a smaller, range of beers on tap, because they should all be good, but why only four? I love four. When you talk about 15, way overwhelming. The last thing in the world I want to do is try 15 beers on tap.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to speak for Kyle. I think he can kind of speak to his own preference for building his program like this. But I think it's really reminiscent of going to an old pub in, the UK and Europe, and just you have your best bitter, you have your dark mild, you've got those few styles, and they're not even named. They were house beers, and it's just kind of hearkening back to that era where good beer could be made anywhere, and you didn't have to wade through the 9,000 breweries in America to figure out what's good and what's not good at the end of the day. So, but Kyle, I'll kind of let you speak to like why only four for your specific program.
Well, like I touched on earlier, we run the Mad Batter next door where we have 15 beers. You know, you've got Mick Ultra on drafts. You've got 3 or 4 Pilsners, Pale Ales, IPAs, New Englands, doubles. You got to try all that over there. And we have a lot of fun, but it's a completely different sort of animal. And I thought the most fun of having a second bar was being different. Don't just, you know, like we don't want to be that cookie. We do something well over there. We have the opportunity to do whatever we want over here and try something different, go a different direction. I mean, I know we're really cocktail focused and, you know, we spend a lot of time on the curation of our wine list, but the beer was just like, honestly, is it being different. Once we figured it out, it's perfect. We have the perfect setup. Like I said, I lean on the brewers to do what they do, brew good beer. We keep the lines clean. We educate the customer. We have fun with it. But it's not one of those over the top, you know, we're not chasing fish pricing and different specials and like all the heckness that comes with the kitchen. We kind of let the beer just speak for itself. We have fun with it. We keep it clean and we drink a lot of them and they're always here. Like they asked what comes next. I said, whatever Sean brings down next week. What I want to say, you know, it's like we hire cooks to cook. I don't stand there and tell them how to cook.
I love that line. Just ask Sean what's next week. Last beer, we're going to wrap it. I love the sound of the opening. We're open here now at the Cricket Club. The bar's open. Customers are coming in. The photographer's here to take some pictures. And the last beer, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, certainly. The last beer we're drinking right now is for warmth. This is our 3.8% little oatmeal stout. This is a beer that we'd been wanting to make for a long time. Today's realm of stouts is so focused on huge ABV, huge alcohol content and huge kind of over the top residual sugar. We wanted to do something that stayed in that like really drinkable, balanced, low ABV realm. And we're always really happy with this beer, especially on cask. It drinks exactly how we'd like it to. It carries just enough roast that reminds you that it's a stout, carries just enough of that like light background fruity character from the yeast that we use, as well as some of the malt in there. I get a lot of like deep caramel from this as well, which I think plays pretty complementary to it. We don't mess around with this beer because it's not really a beer to mess around with, but we do a vanilla version of this every now and then. That's really fun, and that's about as wild as we're willing to get with this. We like to keep it pretty straightforward.
Well, it's been great. Thanks for welcoming me to Cape May, New Jersey, Kyle, and Ryan and Sean. And we had so much fun last week. We were at Wildwood's Barbecue, which I don't know if you know this, Joel, one of the owners of Wildwood's Barbecue, also has a Philly connection, even though they're from Australia. Joel has run a couple of restaurants in Philly. So it really gives you a nice, well-rounded, welcome. But last thing again, we did it last week. Sean, you're going to have a question for Ryan, and Ryan, you're going to have a question for Sean, and then we'll wrap it up.
Man, I should have known. I didn't prepare well. I didn't know that this was a standard thing now. I guess my question can be really straightforward and simple. Ryan, you've had at least 2, maybe more of these beers that we're drinking on cask here, either on tap at our brewery or via cans. And now, I know you said earlier that this was your first time here at the Cricket Club. You don't have to go into a ton of detail, but how do you feel about the difference in how beers that you've had on tap or in can versus here on cask have drank? Maybe a few character specifics if you could remember. And do you prefer one to the other?
That is a good question. I mean, I will say, sitting at your brewery, I do feel, even though it's not designed like an English pub, I do feel like I'm just kind of sitting with friends and like having this same type of experience. So the beers themselves, though, I think, like Seas of the Ocean, I think is a good example. I've had that on regular draft. I've had that in can. I've had that now on cask. And I think that beer, it's experienced 3 different ways. Like today, it really kind of relaxed a little bit of that bitterness from the noble hops. and really I don't want to say dumbed down, but like kind of just like dialed down the malt, and it really just like that smooth. I always think, when I think of cask beer, I always think of just silk. The word silk, and just like the head that comes with it, and it's just very silky smooth. And that beer was just delicious. It's great the other two ways as well, right? Like it depends on like the context of when you're having a beer, I think. And my philosophy has always been there's a time and a place for every beer. I'll drink a Bud Light, whatever, in the time and place when it's right. So the time and place of drinking it last week out of cans and it was a little bit warm, like that was the time and place for it, and the time and place of drinking it, like I said, at Tennessee Avenue, it was cold and had it with a burger, like that was great, So I think that it was neat to see the three versions of that beer differently.
Next thing you know, Ryan's going to ask a question, but I just want to say, listen to that sound. There's this hum of people. The bar just opened. You can hear in the background there's people talking, and it's friendly. And then this is what a real pub is like.
My question for Sean is not related to beer. Is how was your surf session this morning from the beginnings of, is it Debbie or Deborah? I think it's Debbie, Tropical Storm Debbie. And where are you surfing this weekend?
That's a great question. I didn't surf this morning. I was actually at a concert in Philly last night late, so I was not getting up early before work this morning. But yesterday morning, I surfed local to me near Atlantic City. It was just the first little push from Debbie that's coming in. It was a ton of fun. It cleaned up in the morning. The water got really cold again. So my session got cut a bit short because I only had warm water wax with me, and my board turned into a skating rink after about 25 minutes in the water. But for that first 20 to 30 minutes, it was a blast. This weekend, even though the storm turned westward, I think we should still get a reasonable push of water in. I'm looking forward to surfing this weekend. Actually, fun little plug from one of the non-beer collaborations we spoke about last weekend. This weekend, Heart of Surfing is doing their big Hard Rock sponsored surf lessons and event in Atlantic City. So I'll be there helping volunteer, teach surf lessons to those kids Saturday morning, and either before or after. I'll be somewhere between LBI and Avalon, probably finding a decent waiver break. So I appreciate the non-beer question, but I'm looking forward to a beer after my surf session this weekend.
And again, second week in a row, these guys, they really want to talk about surfing and beer, and that's a whole nother show and program. Maybe your next job, Ryan, you'll be editor of surfing and beer. So we're going to make a big toast here. We got our photographer, Pixie Yates, my wife here, just walked in. Kyle's opening up. I want to thank you guys so much. Kyle at the Cricket Club, Sean at the Seed Beer, and Ryan Brower, editor and writer, great friend. Thanks so much for joining me here. Big shout out to our engineer, Armin Spengen. I'm Jimmy Carboni. Cheers, and thank you for joining us on Heritage Radio Network. Let's toast, guys. Cheers. Beer Sessions Radio is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.